Imagine a meticulously planned heist where thieves dig a secret tunnel right into a bank vault, disappearing with millions, leaving no trace, until a single, drunken boast unravels everything. It was the morning of October 27, 2014, in Gohana, Sonipat district, Haryana. The town was waking up, people heading to work, shopkeepers opening their shutters. Amidst this usual hustle, the Punjab National Bank branch was also starting its daily operations. Bank employees entered one by one after the half-day Saturday and Sunday holiday, anticipating a busy day. They powered on computers, files piled on desks, completely unaware that this day would be anything but ordinary. In fact, within minutes, their world was about to be turned upside down. Shortly after arriving, branch manager Devender Malik headed towards the secure locker room to check some important files. This room housed the life savings, ancestral jewelry, and crucial documents of hundreds of families from the surrounding area. But as manager Malik opened the heavy door and stepped inside, the sight before him sent shivers down his spine. The entire locker room was in disarray. Papers lay scattered across the floor, broken doors of sturdy lockers hung open, and the gold, silver, and valuables once stored within were gone. Horrified, his heart pounded uncontrollably. He immediately called out to the other bank employees, who rushed in within seconds. The scene clearly indicated a robbery, but a perplexing question lingered in everyone's mind: how did the thieves get in? The bank's main gate was perfectly intact. No walls were broken, no holes in the ceiling, and no windows were damaged. Amidst the chaos, the manager's gaze fell upon a large hole in the floor in a corner of the room. It descended into darkness, revealing an entire long tunnel. For a few stunned seconds, the entire staff fell silent. They now understood: the thieves had broken into the bank from underground. Out of approximately 360 lockers, 86 had been broken into. These contained the life savings of many families. Some had wedding jewelry for their daughters, others years of careful savings. With trembling hands, the police were immediately informed of a multi-million Indian rupee tunnel robbery. The news sent shockwaves through the police department. Within minutes, sirens blared as police vehicles arrived at the bank. The story spread like wildfire across the entire area, and a throng of people rushed towards the bank. Those with lockers inside cried out, attempting to force their way in. Police quickly took charge, moving the distraught crowd outside to prevent any tampering with evidence. When police officers entered the locker room and saw the tunnels opening, they too were astonished. It was immediately clear that this was no ordinary theft; it had to be the work of a professional gang. The biggest challenge now for the police was to determine the tunnel's length, where its other end emerged, and who these robbers were who had executed such an audacious crime right under the nose of law enforcement. Without wasting a moment, the police decided to delve into the mystery. An officer, equipped with a torch, was lowered into the dark tunnel. It was about 0.75 meters wide and 1.2 meters high, excavated with such precision that no underground telephone cables, power lines, or water pipelines were damaged. After crawling on his hands and knees for a considerable time, the officer emerged on the other side, utterly stunned by what he saw. The other end of the tunnel opened into a sealed room of an old, abandoned house. The entire tunnel measured approximately 38 meters in length. This was nothing short of a cinematic heist, where thieves had worked for months underground to create a secret passage to the bank, all without anyone suspecting a thing. The precision, patience, and daring with which this robbery was executed astonished even the police. This was no minor theft of a few million Indian rupees. Through this 38-meter-long tunnel, an estimated 1 billion Indian rupees worth of jewelry and valuables had been completely cleared from the bank. That morning marked the beginning of a sensational case for Gohana, one that would dominate national headlines for many days and cement its place as one of India's most dangerous and daring bank robberies. The old, abandoned house where the tunnel emerged was located across the road from the bank, a short distance away. A padlock hung outside, and all its windows were sealed with plywood, preventing any light from entering or anyone from peering inside. From the outside, the house looked utterly deserted, as if no one had set foot there in years. However, the scene inside was even more shocking than the bank's locker room. The tunnel had originated from a dug-up floor in one of the rooms. Several plastic bags were filled with soil excavated during the digging. Police also found a razor there, suggesting the robbers had stayed for weeks, meticulously executing their plan. Since the underground telephone lines and water pipelines were completely secure, it was evident that the robbers possessed remarkably precise knowledge of the entire underground structure and the bank's layout. When police questioned nearby neighbors and shopkeepers, they learned the house belonged to a man named Mahipal and had been vacant for a considerable time. Neighbors were baffled as to how an entire 38-meter tunnel could have been dug right under their noses without them ever hearing any sounds of excavation. By now, the news had spread like wildfire in the media, and every news channel was abuzz with discussions about this robbery. Everyone was desperate to know who could have orchestrated such a massive crime. The police were under immense pressure. Given the gravity of the situation, a special investigation team, SIT, was formed, led by Joint Commissioner Vivek Sharma of Gurgaon Police, to investigate. But while the police were searching for clues amidst the tunnel and evidence, a different scene unfolded on the street outside the bank. A crowd of people had gathered, their entire world locked inside those stolen lockers, now shattered. Some had cried until their tears ran dry, while others stared blankly at the bank building, as if awaiting a miracle that would return their belongings. In anger and helplessness, people kept repeating one demand: "We want our belongings back." They sat in protest outside the bank, completely blocking the main road. The biggest reason for their distress was the law stating that banks offered no guarantee for items kept in lockers. When an individual places gold, silver, or valuables in a bank locker, the bank has no official record of what is stored inside. These items are neither insured, nor does the customer possess proper receipts. This situation became even more complicated after the theft, as it was now incredibly difficult for these individuals to prove what was in their lockers and what its value was. Consequently, the bank disclaimed responsibility, as technically, they had no knowledge of the contents of each locker. This led to public anger not being limited to just the thieves. People openly questioned bank officials. They firmly alleged that such a precise robbery could not have occurred without insider assistance. A profound suspicion took root: how could the 38-meter tunnel have opened precisely at the locker room? Their suspicions were further solidified when it became known that the robbers had cleverly targeted only those lockers containing large quantities of jewelry. Furthermore, the victims began to accuse the bank of serious negligence. According to regulations, locker room floors should incorporate steel plates with concrete to prevent underground breaches. However, no such measures were in place here, which allowed the robbers to break through the weaker concrete. Additionally, there were no CCTV cameras in the bank's locker room, and the locker cabinets in use were decades old. The situation in Gohana became so tense that the police had to register two separate first information reports, FIRs. The first FIR was against the unknown robbers who committed the heist, while the second was filed directly against bank officials for their negligence. Subsequently, the Haryana police formed 7 different teams, dispatching them not only to areas near the bank but also to approximately 20 surrounding villages in search of the thieves. However, the biggest challenge was that the police had no clear clues, no names, and no faces of the culprits. The pressure on the police mounted to such an extent that Haryana DGP N. Vashisht had to publicly announce a reward of 100,000 Indian rupees for anyone providing information about the robbers, assuring that their identity would remain secret. The police hoped that criminals who executed such a massive robbery would eventually make a mistake. Yet, even after 2 or 3 days, the Haryana police had nothing concrete by way of evidence beyond a razor blade and piles of soil in the empty house. Given the seriousness of the case, the Prime Minister's office, PMO, soon intervened. R. N. Ravi, head of the Joint Intelligence Committee, who later served as governor of several states including West Bengal, Meghalaya, and Tamil Nadu, was specifically sent to Gohana for this case. With the PMO's involvement, national attention now focused on the investigation. Intelligence agencies and Haryana police collaborated, meticulously scrutinizing every small and large detail of the case. During this time, the police summoned Mahipal, the owner of the old abandoned house, for questioning. Mahipal told SP Arun Singh Nira of the Haryana police that he hadn't set foot in that old house for a long time and knew nothing about what was happening inside. However, the police found inconsistencies in Mahipal's statements. Just 4 days before the robbery, on October 23, the Diwali festival had been celebrated, and Mahipal's own residence was merely a few meters from the abandoned house. According to Hindu tradition, people illuminate every corner of their homes, big or small, during Diwali. SP Nira found it entirely implausible that someone living so close by would neglect his other property. Yet, without concrete evidence against him, they couldn't take direct action. Thus, the police began to place Mahipal under strict surveillance, considering him the prime suspect. They monitored his every move, who he met, where he went, and whom he spoke to on the phone and for how long. During this surveillance, police noticed that Mahipal was in constant, lengthy communication with a person named Rajesh. However, the police were still waiting for a major breakthrough. Then, precisely 3 days after the incident, on the night of October 29, the police received a call that would completely change the direction of the entire case. The caller was from Katwal village in Sonipat, just 5 kilometers from the Gohana bank. He informed the police that a man from his village, usually unemployed and aimless, was drunkenly boasting to his friends. In his inebriated state, he had even claimed, the Gohana bank robbery that the police are chasing. "We did it, and no matter how hard they try, they'll never catch us." The informant also revealed that another young man from the village was involved in the robbery. It was possible this was just drunken bluster, but the case had reached a point where the police couldn't risk overlooking any lead, no matter how small. Without losing a moment, a police team was dispatched to Katwal village that very night. The police raided Katwal and immediately apprehended the 2 young men named by the informant, Surinder alias Kala and Balraj. Initially, both attempted to mislead the police. But under strict interrogation, their resolve broke. They not only confessed to their crime but also unveiled such layers of the entire conspiracy that even police officers were stunned. They revealed that the mastermind behind the bank robbery was none other than Mahipal, the owner of the old abandoned house. As Mahipal's name emerged, the entire picture began to fall into place for the police. Following further intense questioning, the police, acting on their information, successfully recovered approximately 38.91 kilograms of jewelry and 60,000 Indian rupees in cash. During this, the two also disclosed that besides Mahipal, 2 other individuals, Satish and Rajesh, were involved in the theft. Rajesh was the same person Mahipal had been speaking with for hours on the phone. Now, the police had 3 names, Mahipal, Satish, and Rajesh. However, Rajesh had caught wind of the police operation and had fled. Satish also learned that Balraj and Surinder had been arrested and the stolen goods recovered. Panicked, he called Mahipal to inform him of everything. Since Mahipal's number was being tracked, as soon as Satish made the call that evening, the police used phone tracking to apprehend Satish from an outer colony in Gohana. The next target was Mahipal, who was now hiding, terrified by the news of his accomplices' arrests. He realized that escaping the grasp of the law was impossible. Overwhelmed by the fear of disgrace and the shock of losing millions of Indian rupees worth of goods, Mahipal took a horrifying step. Before the police could reach him, he committed suicide by consuming poison in his car in Panipat. This was a significant blow to the police, as Mahipal's death buried many secrets with him. The police still had Rajesh, who was constantly changing his location to evade arrest. Several teams of Haryana police were tirelessly searching for him. Finally, with the help of intelligence and surveillance, police located him in Narela, near Delhi. On November 21, 2014, police set a trap and apprehended him there. Rajesh's arrest proved to be a major turning point in the case. Based on his information, police recovered the remaining portion of the stolen jewelry and valuables that he had taken with him when he fled. By this point, the police had recovered a total of approximately 50 kilograms of jewelry, 373,000 Indian rupees in cash, a pistol, and cartridges. In addition to these individuals, police also arrested others who had assisted the thieves. When Satish and Rajesh recounted the entire story of the bank robbery to the Haryana police, everyone was astonished. This whole narrative began with Mahipal's devious idea. Mahipal was originally from Kasandi village in Sonipat district. His family included his wife, one son, and 3 daughters. Not highly educated, he had pursued various jobs from the beginning. He drove a taxi for a long time, then tried running a motel, but success eluded him in every venture. Finally, he turned to property dealing. His luck seemed to change in this business. He built 3 bungalows in a short period. Everyone wondered what lottery Mahipal, once a taxi driver, had won to be printing so much money. However, Mahipal's approach to property dealing was unconventional. Driven by greed for greater profits, he primarily acquired disputed properties. The very house from which the tunnel was dug was also a disputed property. He had brought Satish into the property dealing business, and they ran it together. Initially, things went well, but then both started incurring significant losses in property, causing them considerable distress. One day, Mahipal told Satish, "We need to do something big to cover our losses, pay off all our debts, and secure a comfortable life." It was during this conversation that he first proposed the idea of robbing the bank to Satish. Satish, also desperate to escape poverty and the burden of debt, readily joined Mahipal's plan. Mahipal told Satish they would raid the Punjab National Bank near his house in Gohana, make off with the gold, and disappear without a trace. However, 2 people alone couldn't execute such a massive bank robbery. So, they began searching for individuals in their network who, due to financial hardship and desperation, would be willing to take any risk. Satish first recruited his village friend, Balraj, to the team. Balraj played a crucial role in the most difficult and laborious task, digging the tunnel. Next to join the gang was 25-year-old Surinder, who proved to be the technical mind of the robbery. Coming from a carpentry background, Surinder engineered a support structure of wooden planks inside the tunnel, ensuring that the 38-meter-long excavation remained stable and didn't collapse anywhere. Rajesh, who had a history of criminal activities and was struggling financially, was the next to join the plan. He worked day and night like a laborer, assisting with the tunnel digging. In addition to these core members, 3 other individuals, driven by greed, provided assistance. Arvind, a resident of Gohana, agreed to help them for a mere daily wage of 5,000 Indian rupees. Meanwhile, Rohit and Aman from Delhi provided fake SIM cards to prevent the police from tracing the robbers' digital footprints. In this way, Mahipal and Satish assembled a team of young men from Katwal village, relying on whom they intended to carry out the bank robbery. Initially, their plan wasn't to dig a tunnel. Over approximately 6 months, they had explored various methods to rob the bank. They first attempted to break in through the bank's rear, then considered entering through the roof. However, fear of capture and high risks forced them to abandon both ideas. Finally, Mahipal's attention turned to the strong room floor. He realized that the strong room's floor wasn't particularly thick, and breaking through it from below would be an easier and safer route. Following this, Mahipal began to meticulously stake out the bank like a professional spy. He himself had a locker in that very Punjab National Bank. He repeatedly visited the bank under the pretext of checking his locker, and each time, he would measure the distance from the locker room to his empty house in steps, to accurately determine the required tunnel length. Furthermore, he memorized the guards' timings, the precise opening and closing hours of the bank, and every other minute detail. After weeks of reconnaissance, the excavation of the tunnel began inside the deserted house. To avoid suspicion, they completely sealed the house from the outside. The main door was never used, and all windows were boarded up from the inside with plywood. They only used a small kitchen window for entry and exit. The most interesting aspect was that they didn't dig in the dead of night but during the day. This was a clever tactic, as the noise of the digging would be masked by the hustle and bustle of street traffic. These individuals were so cunning that they took special care to ensure no underground telephone cables, power lines, or water pipelines were damaged. They knew that if even a single wire was cut, government employees would arrive for repairs, and their entire plan would be exposed. After approximately 40 days of continuous labor, the 38-meter-long tunnel finally reached directly beneath the strong room of the Punjab National Bank. Mahipal chose the night of October 25 for the robbery, as it was a Saturday with a half-day at the bank, followed by a Sunday holiday. This gave them more than 5 days before the bank reopened on Monday morning at 9:30 a.m. As night fell, Satish, Rajesh, and Balraj entered the tunnel from the desolate house and, guided by the faint glow of torches, crawled their way to the floor beneath the bank's strong room. Upon reaching, they broke through the concrete layer and entered the strong room one by one. The room was silent, but soon, the sounds of cutters echoed as they worked on the lockers. Outside, no one suspected a thing as they systematically broke into 86 of the 360 lockers, filled their bags with gold, silver jewelry, and cash, and escaped with millions of Indian rupees through the same tunnel. This is how one of India's most daring bank robberies was executed. However, this cunning heist, valued at approximately 1 billion Indian rupees, ultimately crumbled like a house of cards due to a single boast made under the influence of alcohol. When the full story of this robbery came to light, the entire nation was astonished. There were widespread calls for severe punishment for these criminals. Surprisingly, the case dragged on for so long in court that, to this day, there is no clear public information regarding the exact sentences received by each accused. Furthermore, while the police did recover approximately 50 kilograms of jewelry and 373,000 Indian rupees in cash from the thieves, the difficulty now lay in the fact that the victims themselves had to prove in court that the recovered jewelry belonged to them. Victims had to provide proof of ownership for their ornaments and valuables, after which their belongings were gradually returned by court order. However, much of the gold had already been melted down and converted into cash. Consequently, many victims never recovered their life savings.